Hi, everybody. Hello. And so we're live. I am now in Copenhagen with, no pressure, God herself,
No.
Robyn Walser. We are, we got to show this. We were having a skål here. Wherever you are, have yourself a drink or a shrimp cocktail or cup of tea, whatever is convenient for you. And so this is like two girls hanging out, having a little chat about things that are important to us. Just let's start with a skål and have a little, yes. And if you're there, it kind of feels like we're literally, the computer's on a box and we're like staring into like space. So if you're there, please send comments and hellos and waves and, skulls and whatever, so that we feel like you are there with us. And welcome if you're there live. Welcome if you watch this afterwards. We're just happy that you're here. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Rikke. I am a psychologist. I run a training and supervision company here in Scandinavia. And I have the pleasure of this week, hello Michelle, of this week hosting a 2-year training program, part of a 2-year training program where Robyn is here giving supervision and training. So you want to introduce yourself to those who don't know you?
Sure. My name is Robyn Walser. I'm a psychologist. I live in the United States and practice in California. I have a private consultation business there where I do supervision and consultation on ACT. As well, I work at the National Center for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder and am an assistant professor at UC Berkeley, California. So I have lots of jobs, and I'm very happy to be here with Rikke today and to talk about all kinds of things. So,
one of the things we are going to talk about is this little baby here. This is one of your babies, right?
Yes, it's a baby.
The Heart of ACT. This was recently published, wasn't it?
Just came out.
Just came out.
At the end of the year.
Yeah.
That's true.
So, hello. Good to see you all. Thank you for all the comments. Hello. So this is the Heart of ACT. So just before we talk about, this book, could you tell us a little bit, what is ACT?
Well, so acceptance and commitment therapy is considered a third wave behavioral therapy, and essentially it's built into the name. We're looking at acceptance of internal experience, not necessarily situations, but opening up to what you feel, think, and sense in a way that moves you forward with respect to commitments and values. So we want to define values in acceptance and commitment therapy and get people in line with those while they carry their emotional thought and sensation experience forward. So one of the pillars, or 3 pillars of ACT, are open, aware, and engaged, and that's just a very brief introduction about what it is that we're trying to do in acceptance and commitment therapy. Hopefully, you know this well. Hopefully folks will have read some about it. There's lots of books.
And so, tell me about this book. Why did you write this one? Because I know you've written a lot of books.
Yeah. This book in particular, because I was interested in trying to describe process, essentially. And when I open up the book, I talk about the problem of diffusion of innovation, which basically means is the more you spread an intervention or an innovation, the more it becomes diffuse. And so what happens in that is you can become overly techniqueized. You may have seen this a bit in mindfulness or use of compassion, where it's popular and people will do things like just talk about the techniques and give standard interventions that feel a bit canned, and then say that they're doing the intervention. And I'm hoping to draw people back to the process of therapy, including the interpersonal relationship and what's happening for people intrapersonally, and thinking about case conceptualization and functional analysis across time. So that is what I want to focus on. And there's 2 in the book, that's what I want to focus on. There's 2 key pieces there that have to do with our existence and what it means to be human, and what it means to have a heart and step forward in your life, and existence and process, I suppose, are what I'm focusing on.
And so I remember, because I've been to, I think, so many of your trainings, first of all, because you've been here, and whenever I get to go to a, if you ever get the chance to go to a Robyn Walser training, you want to go to a Robyn Walser training, you are like, I know, this is probably uncomfortable for you because, you feel a lot of pressure, but you are, to me, the trainer's trainer, and one of those people who have taught me the most in life in general, and also as a ACT trainer. And one of the things, I remember so many things that you taught me, but one of the things is we were at a training and you were talking about this eyes on exercise.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell people about this example? Because I think it's both quite funny and a little sad and interesting at the same time.
I don't remember what happened to you specifically, so maybe you can spark my memory on that. But within the eyes exercise, it's generally a willingness exercise where you meet.
What is the eyes on? You might want to tell people what is the eyes on exercise.
Where you actually look into each other's eyes for a period of time, letting whatever shows up during that time show up. And essentially, it's a way to demonstrate willingness that I'll stay in the presence of another human being while I'm feeling what I'm feeling and expose myself to those kinds of experiences, yet stay present and connected. So just an example of what we mean by being open and committed.
And so one of the things I remember you was telling me that you met somebody who did an eyes on exercise without really knowing why.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about in the book. Is they saw the particular technique used in a workshop and then did it, but didn't know why they were doing it. And so it was very confusing for the client, confusing for the therapist as well. And it's the kind of thing that can happen when you get a canned or overly techniqueized approach. And I'm not saying that doing the exercises is it's not a bad thing. Like, that's where people should start and really think about how to implement those exercises and metaphors, etc., all the things that you do in it. But you should never stop there. Like, it's a rich, textured, process-based intervention. And something that I continue to learn, and I've been doing this since 1991, and if you allow yourself to sort of open up to the creative part of it and stay with the process-based part of it, you never get bored. But if you just do the canned pieces, like now I have to do the eyes-on exercise, or now I got to deliver this metaphor, or this is the thing to say when the client is fused, or this is the thing to do when you're trying to do self as context or perspective taking, then you lock yourself into an overly routinized therapy. And it, in my opinion, sort of takes the heart and beauty out of the therapy when you're in that place.
Yeah. And, I get that a lot as a trainer, that people come back to me and they say, so I did the passengers on the bus, or I did the eyes on, or, I did Joe the Bum, whatever. And so I did ACT. And what would your response to that be? Like, I did a metaphor, I did an exercise, hence
I did ACT. Well, so I would say you did a teeny tiny portion of ACT, and I don't want to be thoughtful and gentle here. You've got to start somewhere, and indeed, it's where I started. I started with the protocol, and I looked at the metaphors and exercises, and I memorized them and implemented them in sessions, but I didn't stop there. And really would encourage someone who says that I did the bus metaphor and so I'm doing ACT to push themselves to go much, much further with the therapy. If you can have a rich, fluid, contextualized, functional therapy without it being canned, but it does mean more work on the part of the person running the intervention. I just think it's worth it in terms of what you experience in the therapy, what the client experiences, and what the possibilities are as the client steps out into the world and faces their own interpersonal struggles and relationships and that kind of thing.
Could you tell me about, because I know the work that you're doing is highly experiential. Even, I think I haven't seen you, for the last few years, I haven't seen you actually do a lot of exercises. I see you working more like process based, and still everything you are doing is highly experiential. Could you say a little bit about that? How do you work experientially without, administering one metaphor after the other? What does that look like out when you're actually doing your magic? What does that look like?
I think it's slightly hard to describe, and part of why I wrote The Heart of That is I'm trying to describe something that's challenging to do. But if you think about maybe 4 levels of process, at least, and maybe there's more, at least starting there with what are you experiencing internally? So there's an ongoing and fluid process there. What's happening in between you and the client? There's an ongoing and fluid process there. Nothing stays the same. You're moving and talking and generating content and material. And then where are you going from beginning to end, or what is the overarching process or the ongoing change that's happening as you and the client are moving toward their resiliency, their values-based living, whatever the case might be. And so as I'm thinking about what I'm doing with the client to bring that fluidity into place, I'm thinking, what are the patterns of behavior that the person is demonstrating? And what are the pathological processes that are involved here, like maybe avoidance or fusion? And then what process am I going to bring, and how am I going to get myself and our relationship going all at the same time? So it sounds challenging, but once you get rolling, you can actually make it a fluid process. And I'd say the key thing is that I'm really assessing in the background, what is the function of this behavior? What is the function of this behavior? What are the function with the client? What are the patterns of clients' behaviors that are getting them stuck and in trouble, and how can we shift the function? And so the fluidity is what stands behind that is functional analysis. Of course, I want to address the content, like what is the client saying about their experience? I want to hear about that, but inside of that, I'm looking for patterns of behavior and how that's functioning in their lives.
So it sounds to me like you're doing like this constant functional analysis, and all the time like assessing, the function and shaping.
And shaping.
Yeah.
Yeah. So reinforcing what I think is going to be more workable, not reinforcing what isn't workable, pointing out the patterns to the client, seeing how I feel and giving direct contingency feedback. So here's what I hear, and this is how it's impacting me. And the only way to do that is to know what's going on inside my own skin. I, of course, have to be able to discern, is this something that I say now or not? Because if it's not in the service of the client, then I don't want to say it.
Sure.
I want it to be in the service of the client, whatever's happening internally. So I might say something like, I notice anxiety rising within me as you share this experience. What do you notice for yourself? So that it's interactive. And then I want to give feedback to the client about their processes and what's happening for them. So I don't want just what's happening in the session to be the only place where they're learning, and I want them to take it outside the session and do work in order to have their lives grow outside the session as well as inside the session. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, you did. You did. Okay. And two of the things that strikes me as I sit here and watch you and listen to you is like things I've thought about. I often think, what would Robyn do?
Thank you. That's very kind.
And
unless it takes you astray.
No.
I would take then don't do it.
It seems to be working. But there are two things that strikes me, like when I look at your, apart from your huge knowledge in it, there's also this kind of personal, like, style, like behavioral repertoire, like a Robyn behavioral repertoire. And two things, there's so much. Let me just say, you are so funny. I don't see that in therapy, obviously not. Well, sometimes, yeah.
Funny humor, but is good.
I know you and so many, privately as well. You're one of the most funny versions I really know. It's just so funny. What strikes me out when you're doing therapy is two things. The one is that you're very brave. Like, you're not afraid of telling the person what shows up for you, and and also like giving feedback that is that could be hard. So you're very brave. And another thing that strikes me is that you care. Like, you care so much about people and, the people that you work with. And I just love that combination of bravery and care. Like, so you will be direct. You will be, you'll tell them. It's like you have a bullshit detector. Can we say that? We can say that. So, but you will give pretty direct feedback in the service of moving them somewhere, and then you care deeply about them. Have you noticed that?
Well, I get told that frequently, is that what I'm doing is bold or brave. And I think part of another thing that I put in the Heart of Act, which is probably, certainly other people have thought about this, but has been with me for a long time, is this idea of our existence and how much time we have on Earth. And so even as a youngster, when I was in graduate school, did one of my projects on existentialism from a behavioral perspective. And one of the things that guides me in terms of the boldness or bravery is we're all running out of time. And that it seems important to me a good deal of the time, unless it's functionally not so, which could happen, is to move rapidly with clients and to get our feet going in ways that we care about and value, because truly life passes us by very quickly. And I think that existence is what gives us meaning, and existence is short. And so I suppose some of that bravery and boldness is about connecting to, let's make it happen in the time that we have. And then it's also a values-based process for me, is if you're in the room in an authentic and present way with someone, you care for them, it gives you permission to be more bold. And I think sometimes therapists are a little afraid to say some of what they actually do want to say, because they're not being willing themselves. And so this is one of the things, like in the book, I'm saying a lot about what do you need to work on as a therapist in order to be present with your clients in a wholehearted and bold way. And I think values and our short time here is probably a part of what motivates me to do that. So it comes from a very sincere place. And I'm not just being bold for the sake of being bold. I'm being bold in the service of helping the client to break out of the rigidity that's keeping them stuck.
Yeah, because there's different ways of being bold. I get that, and you're for sure very very authentic.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. It comes from that.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, what I've seen, it's very authentic, and it comes from a genuine place of care and like boldness in the service of helping that person. We do have there are so many things that I think about when you teach and when you do ACT. You use self-disclosure a lot, I've noticed. Many of us who are teaching ACT are using self-disclosure. And I have so many times people ask me, how do I use self-disclosure? How much can I disclose? What would Robyn Walser do? What would Robyn Walser say to that?
I would say it depends.
It depends.
Which is a response I often give. And it's not always what people want to hear, right? They want to get a rule about it. But
we want a recipe.
The recipe.
Yes.
But the rule is the problem. Flexibility. I mean, of course, rules are good and healthy for us, but if we're just following rules, if we're rigidly following rules, then we're going to create difficulties for ourselves and as a therapist in the therapy room too. So I want to break the rules a little bit.
Yes.
And that's part of self-disclosure, because if you think about how many of us are trained, you don't self-disclose, you don't talk about yourself. But it's actually a core competency inside of ACT, is that you do self-disclosure. The key way I assess self-disclosure is this in the service of the client?
Yeah.
And if I think it's going to be about me and it's serving a purpose for me, I don't self-disclose. But if it's in the service of the client, I do. You can't always know that whether that's correct or not, and the only way to know is see what comes next. And if what comes next is an opening and something that feels more positive and moving in the right direction, then good. But if it's something that sort of closes things down and the client gets silent and in a way they look like they've disconnected because you've said something about yourself, then it's reassess and see if you need to steer in a different direction.
Here's to breaking the rules.
Here's to breaking the rules.
Skull.
Skull.
So if you're with us, just, wave, say hello. If you have questions, we can see, well, if we get close enough, we can see that, we can see your comments. If you have questions, please ask questions. It's just fun to interact with you, even though we're kind of sitting here in a box, in a Copenhagen box.
In a Copenhagen box. Yeah.
So, sorry. One question I did get from Karina before we went on here, that which is such a good question. She said, "What would Robyn Walser?" This is a new saying. What would Robyn Walser do?
It's a little bit embarrassing.
Well, yeah.
I want to be
here's to breaking the rules. We can break that rule. We can be embarrassing,
yeah.
And of course, I get that. Sometimes it's. I notice sometimes it's easier for us to give credit to others than accepting it ourselves. Yeah. I think maybe that's what's going on right now. To me, you are so precious.
Thank you.
And Karina's question, which is so good, she'd say, she's asking, what do you say when a client comes in and says, "Can you give me some tools so that I can fix this, please?" What would Robyn Walser say?
It depends. It really does depend.
Yes.
And so it depends on a couple of things, like what does the clients mean by tools? Are these things that are going to help them open, be repetitive, moving forward? Because certainly there are tools that we have in our toolbox that help us do those kinds of things. But typically when a client is asking something like that, they're running from their own sadness or fear or anxiety or whatever they're describing. Like, give me toolbox for happiness is about, let me get away from the things that I don't like. And so then I'm probably going to look at their struggle with trying to get away from happiness or get away from the things they don't like and move towards happiness. I should say I'm a fan of happiness, and I think that moving towards resiliency, repetitive processes, and purpose, all of those things are really important. But sometimes you have to get people to let go of old habits and focus on things like, where is control getting in the way? So I might instead do a little bit of what we call creative hopelessness, really just undermining excessive and problematic control. And I want to do it in a compassionate way, I want to hammer people about their control.
And so creative hopelessness, I think, well, some of you will refer to you as Mrs. Creative Hopelessness. And surely it's one of my, that rings, it resonates with me, because it's a process that is so difficult for many of us to sit in. Not only is it difficult for the client, but it also can be difficult for the therapist to be in that space where you're not trying to fix anything, particularly because the client is asking you to fix it. And so I've had the pleasure of, attending your workshops, and actually we've been presenting together a few times. And what strikes me is that you're like, maybe this is the bravery and the caring part again. You will not back down. Like, I've seen people, and this can be like out of context, I'm like crying in the breaks because they are asking, please, Robyn, say something that will make this go away. So could you tell us a little bit about creative, what is it, and how do we endure? How do we stay brave and caring while not taking away discomfort?
Well, so let me just say that even though creative hopelessness can feel hard for people, if your grip on control is so tight that all you want to do is control, like, I'm not saying control is bad.
No.
Like, it's, if control is bringing you the things that you want in your life, then seems fine by me, and we shouldn't tackle it. But when I'm leaning in like that, it's hard. I feel anxious too. And I really need to convey that it's not in the service of creating some sort of aversive process. It's in the service of breaking free. So, for instance, I've done this work with veterans who've been just, hell-bent on trying to eliminate symptoms of anxiety or fear or hyperarousal, whatever it is that they're experiencing. They've been in therapy for 25, 30 years or something like that. And they're invested in figuring out ways to just get it to stop, like hyper invested. And it makes sense because they come from traumatic histories, they've been struggling for a long time, often they have problems in all of their relationships. And so the work here isn't to make it worse when I'm doing creative hopelessness. The work is to let go, to open up, to feel free from control. And so I see it as a repetitive process itself. In fact, I've done it with some veterans where in the end they say, even when they have tears and it's hard, we get sort of past that, they're like, I feel relief. Yeah. I feel able to, I do feel like I don't have to do this thing that I've been doing anymore. And so there is a sense in that where therapists can go, oh, it looks terrible, it looks aversive, and it looks that kind of thing. If you pursue it to the point of, I have hope for you, the human being, that you can make a difference in your life that's powerful and significant, really matters to you, that's why I carry it forward, and because I want to get to that place. It's not like you just do it. Here, this is the problem, and part of why I talk about the problem of just techniques in the book. So if you just do the creative hopelessness technique and sort of follow it by the book, and you're not functionally looking at what's happening for the client, it could be experiences, just an aversive thing, or people will watch it and start getting worried themselves and say, oh, I'd never do that thing. But what we're trying to do is create space and openness rather than shut people down and tell them they're wrong. That's not the purpose. And so you have to be watching the function of that as you go through it. And if you watch, and you can see people sort of getting to a place where, okay, I don't know, but it feels less constricted. And it can feel less constricted experientially or psychologically, then you're doing that work. Yes. And I've heard some people say things like, I don't need to do creative hopelessness, right? Or they've actually given the message that they don't need to, somebody told me I don't need to do creative hopelessness. But anytime you're undermining control, that's what you're doing. And that's what creative hopelessness is. So if you're undermining control, you're doing creative hopelessness. And I think people get that confused with the exercises inside creative hopelessness and the purpose of creative hopelessness.
And some people might even think that you do creative hopelessness in the beginning, and then that's it. Then you're over it.
And you're done.
And then you're done. And creative hopelessness is a process that we come back to every time the person is in the control agenda, right? Yeah. And what I think is cool about this is it can seem, now if you look at it and don't get the function, it can look a bit harsh, because you'll all the time you'll be pointing to the hopelessness of the strategy, not the person, but the strategy. And whilst you're doing this, and this is what I think is the fine, this is the way, this is the, what can we say, the thing you want to bring to creative hopelessness is that you, as a therapist, are the efficacious hope. Like you said, that you have hope for the person. So you have no hope for his or her strategies, the unworkable strategies, but you do have hope for the person. And that's what I think that you portray so beautifully as you do this. It might seem, hard, because you will not back down. When I say you will not back down, I mean the times where people are going, but I can do this, or maybe we could do that. And you go, well,
Have you tried it?
Have you tried it? What does your experience tell you? So you're not, not you, but when we do creative hopelessness, sometimes we don't come across as a particular nice person. because we don't say the things that people want to hear, right?
I suppose people might see us, and I mean, I've certainly had questions asked like, don't you think the client will take this as too harshly? And how, where are we leaving them? I even had a friend of mine, and this is kind of funny, he said, it looks like you're doing scorched earth therapy.
What is it?
Scorched earth.
I don't even
just like burning everything.
Oh, okay.
Scorched earth.
Okay.
And I really want to convey that creative hopelessness should be done with compassion, and should feel like it's opening something up, not closing something down.
Yeah.
And so that's, I can't say enough about that. And I think clinicians are afraid to do it, because if you're not understanding the function and you're just asking, did that work, did that work, did that work, then it can look like you're trying to just close people down. And that's not the purpose and not what we're trying to do with this work.
And one of the things that, when you actually, sometimes I refer to as sitting on your hands, like not trying to fix anything, what you're also doing is modeling the model, which I think is one of the things that you do so brilliantly. And I know this is what your book is about as well, to not just talk about ACT, but to actually do it. Yeah. I think that is the heart of ACT, doing the processes and not describing them and teaching people.
If people can arrive at it from a contingency shaped place, and they can get the sense of something, things, like there's an experiential quality here. And part of why I struggled to write this book, as I was writing it, it's like trying to just put words on top of experience. Yes. And the words always fall short. Yeah. Like I rewrote and rewrote and rewrote some of what I was trying to describe. And I just have to recognize that it's always going to fall short, because we don't have the words for experience. Can't always describe what's going on inside. And contingency shaping has that quality too. Like it's not always something that you can just say what's exactly happening. And so I think looking for movement forward, and you're looking at what's happening next, right? Like, are things opening? Are things closing? Is there a rigidity in what the client's doing? And are they engaging in their values, their committed actions after your therapy sessions? Like, those are the kinds of things that I'm looking for and thinking about. And you can see it right in the session. Whether you're doing creative hopelessness work or just using the entire model to move someone, I think that, or to influence someone in ways that are healthy, you can detect it as you're in the room if you're paying attention yourself.
And what does that mean? Because I know many people, including myself, are often so busy trying to figure out what would Robyn do? What do I do? How do I go further? What do I say, or so forth? And it seems to me when I watch you work, like you are so present, like you are there. What can you say something about that?
Yes. Let's see.
If I'm like just crazy worried about what to do next, might I be missing something then?
Potentially. What can happen for clinicians in the therapy room is they get caught up in the next good technique. Yes. Or they get, like, they're thinking so much about what they should be doing that they lose the client. Yes. And they miss, like, important facial or bodily cues, or even some of what they're saying that can point to the function of the behavior. So being present in the room, and this is why I think as practitioners of ACT, we need to practice ACT. Yes. So that we can get in the room with the client in an open, aware, and engaged way. Like, that is the path. And so I'm hopeful, and this is what I try to do when I'm in the room with clients, is to be fully present, listening with intent, listening from like a wholeness of myself, not just with my ears, listening to their body language, listening to the experience in the room, listening to what's happening between us. And from that space, then what to do next flows a little bit more. If you're not caught here in what technique should I use, and you're present here, now you gotta, of course, get the therapy under your belt and spend time really understanding the theoretical pieces of it, and what it means to be present yourself. Practicing present moment work, I think, can be really important. And moving away from these kinds of popish notions of what mindfulness is or what compassion is, and think about it as expanding repertoires that are more aware. Like, I know what's happening in my environment, and I know what's happening inside my skin. I'm conscious of it, I guess is what I should say, by knowledge. And that creates a freedom for me to make choice versus what I'm not. And if I'm doing that in the room, I'll have much more choice in which direction I go. So you can fluently bring in any process at that point. Hopefully I'm using the ones that target the function, right? So that, that process, those 6 core processes are in the room. And I think it just is practice. Starting with the techniques and then moving to processes if I'm ready to go. But what is your relationship like? And what do you notice yourself? What do you notice happening for yourself in the room? I think those things are just as important, because we're shaped by our clients as well.
Yes, we are.
Like, we sometimes just think about ourselves as influencing our clients, but our clients are definitely influencing us. This is a two-way deal, not a I'm influencing them and they're not influencing me.
No. They're all part of the context.
Yeah.
So, Robyn, what is, I sometimes think of myself and act, and, for me, the model has been like a game changer in my life, both the way I work and, the way I am, or the way I behave in this world. Why act? You could have easily done, something else. What's why act? What's that?
Well, I initially started doing something else. I was a big C, little B, right? I was in the cognitive arena, and I'm not even going to put this on tape, but should I just put it?
We put on, okay.
I hope Steve Hayes knows that. Okay. I once even made fun of Skinner, like.
Oh, you made fun of Skinner? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cheers to breaking the rules. Robyn Walser made fun of Skinner.
Because I was like, he doesn't pay attention to cognitions. But that was what goes on, I didn't know, really. I didn't understand Skinner. So it was an uninformed
joke.
Yeah. Uninformed criticism.
Yeah.
And then, through my training, I learned so much more, and has influenced me highly. And I think probably the thing that made the biggest difference for me coming out of this big C is I was suspicious of it, even though I was doing it. And I criticized Skinner in an unknowing way. Is I was suspicious of this idea that people have dysfunctional, irrational, problematic thoughts that it didn't sit right with me. Just as a youngster, when I was first getting my master's degree, I always felt like, why are we, like, there's a critical voice about the critical voice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make.
And so then I attended an ACT workshop with Steve Hayes when I got into graduate school up in Reno, and it just influenced me substantially, and it's made so much sense in terms of our relationship with our internal experience, and that what if thoughts are not dysfunctional? What if behaviors are problematic because they give us in trouble? But the thoughts themselves are not dysfunctional or irrational, they're simply learned. And that, through relating we can derive all these different kinds of things about our world and ourselves in ways that are painful and hard. And it doesn't mean that you're a broken person. And because of the history that I come from, I was relieved, tremendously relieved to know that I wasn't a broken person, that my thoughts weren't bad thoughts that I needed to get rid of. They just were. And so I was saying at that moment.
Have you ever had the experience of being broke?
Let me take another drink of water before I answer that question.
If somebody's around, they should, see that our some
glasses
glasses are almost empty, and they should come with me.
When I was younger, so I come out of a history of domestic violence. Not me, not my mother was violated many times through violence, and there was a lot of turmoil in our family as a child. And I remember thinking pretty young, like, how come this is happening to me? And you get this sort of sense of, how can I be inside of this place? And am I wrong, or am I bad? You get in trouble for the minutest of things, like things that you and I didn't even care about. You could spill a glass of milk and you'd be knocked across the room. And things didn't make sense to me. And so it was sort of broken in the sense of, is this the way the world works? And is this what this is about? And am I a lovable child? Those kinds of things were always sort of with me when I was younger. And of course, you can see that happening with many of our clients as well. They come from these places where they feel like they weren't acceptable or lovable, or something traumatic happened, and they're now feeling broken, even though I would say they're not.
You would say they're not. And still, that feeling.
I do.
And I've seen you use that. I've seen you in instances where you talked about self-disclosure just a little while ago, but I've seen you in instances where you do self-disclose. And when I watch you, I see instances where you don't tell people about your personal story, but it's evident that you know.
Yeah.
Like, you use your story without without telling it to the person.
Yeah, I don't tell people my history in psychotherapy, but I will convey that I have understood trauma, or that I have understood from the inside out the experience of great and many painful events. And it sort of levels that playing field, right? Like, you and your client are not so different. I don't think I can ever fully understand another person's pain, because I'm not inside their skin and I don't have their history. But I can certainly reflect on my own levels of pain and recognize the humanness between us inside of that. And I think it helps with connection. And, your client feels heard. I mean, but not like I'm reflectively listening, kind of heard.
Yes. Yeah. I know pain too. Not your pain, but I know pain. One thing I see you do, Robyn, is that you pay so much attention to, you use the function analysis out in the room. You are shaping, you are reinforcing behaviors that you want to grow, that you want to expand, and you're using the relationship between the two of you so much.
Right.
Could you just tell us a little bit, how do you do that? If you're out there, you're an ACT therapist, and you want to know, how do I use the relationship between me and my client a little bit more? What would you advise?
There's some of this bold move stuff in here, and sometimes it means not responding to clients, which can be a bold move, not responding to the content of what they're telling you, or recognizing that the content is another story that's going to keep them from engaging in the world in ways that feel connected and more vital. And so I think that revealing yourself in session and looking for the emotions that are happening between you and the client are part of this process. I was trying to think of an example, but I can't think of one right off the top of my head.
Sometimes I think about like this. I have two boys at home, And I remember when I was teaching them to tie their shoes,
Yeah.
and it was very painful for me because they would suck at it, you know, until they didn't suck. But there's this moment in parenting for me when I noticed that the kind and loving thing to do right now would be to to sit with them in their distress as they're trying to tie their shoes in a shitty, well, non-working way. So it's shitty until it's not shitty, right? Yeah. And I would sit with them, and everything in me would be, oh, take them out of their misery, you know, do something to help them. But the kind and loving thing would be to sit with them in their misery, you know, as in the service of, you know, teaching them to do these difficult things. And I see that this is what you sometimes do, like people are in a hard place and you sit with them, not to watch them like fry, but to have them contact an experience of, you know, doing something different, broadening their repertoire. And I just think that is still, you know, beautiful. Because it's very loving and kind the way you sit with them.
Well, and if you sit with somebody in their pain, they learn that it's okay, that they're acceptable when they feel this, that they don't have to run from it simply because they've been told all their life to run from it. Like if you're willing to hold this, then they can willingly hold it themselves, like a model holding. And I think that's and being patient with yourself. Not moving too quickly in the therapy, I think, can be an important part of that. Like, you know, clients demand for us to, like, let's get her done, you know, let's make this happen. And sometimes the very thing when that's happening is to even slow down more and make lots of room for shaping willingness and being present, modeling willingness.
Modeling willingness, exactly, and showing them that, and that is what is so touching and moving about this is that, you know, we will sit, like what you are telling your client, sometimes in words and sometimes, you know, in gestures, is that I can't take away your pain, and I can sit with you in it. Yes. I will sit with you in no matter what shows up, which is not too it's not in the service of comforting, but it. Most of the time, well, most times, when I see that you do this, it has the, you know, a function of actually. Right. It is very soothing, but you're not doing it to soothe. Right. You're doing it to expand the behavioral repertoire, and it's just like beautiful clinicianship. I can't use that clinician word. Clinicianship. Clinicianship.
Well, so part of what you see there is new learning, because people see these emotions as dangerous, threatening, problematic, intolerable. But if you sit with them and you get present to them, what you learn is it's none of what your mind says it is. No. And so from that space, if things are not threatening to you, then you don't have to attend to them in the same way that you would attend to something that is actually threatening. Right? So if you're, you know, if there's a lion, attend to it. But feelings are not lions, but we treat them like they are. And so if once you sort of have the experience of, oh, this is not as threatening as my mind says it is, it frees you up to turn your attention elsewhere.
And so, you know, some of the keywords that we use is flexibility and workability, right? We want to use like flexible attention. You know, we want if there's a lion, you better, you know, you might want to run. But if there's an uncomfortable inner experience without the actual lion, you might want to, you know, attend to that flexibly, and, you know, notice whether it's workable or not to navigate on that.
Although I understand you should never run from a lion. You should make yourself look really big and try to scare it away. At least a cougar or a mountain lion.
I've had so little experience with lions. I'd probably get killed.
Make yourself look. Next time you are in the face of a lion.
Next time I meet a lion. So this is just, you know, this is to take a home message from this webinar, guys. Whenever you meet a lion, you just want to look big. Oh, that is hilarious. So, Robyn, you said earlier that you're a fan of happiness, aren't you? Know, we want, of course, we want folks to be happy, or well, you know, happiness has a sort of it can have many functions, but what we wish for people, not only clients, but for people, humankind, is to live a rich and meaningful life. And I know that you Googled how to be happy.
Yes, yeah.
You have like, Robyn knows how to be happy.
I Googled it. Yeah. No, I am, which by the way, if you Google it, you'll find all kinds of crazy stuff about, smiling a lot and these kinds of things, which I don't think ultimately create happiness. I am a fan of happiness, and I want my clients to experience it, but I know they're not going to experience it at the expense of pain. Like if I can eliminate pain, I will then be happy. I'm not so sure that's going to be the outcome if you eliminate pain. And when I think about a rich and textured life, it involves all of those, tasting all of those things that are on the menu. And if you allow for pain, you make room for joy as well. And so if you're like not allowing the pain, you're probably cutting off the joy.
Yeah.
And so what if we make room for the pain, and then by doing so, we make room for joy as well. We open ourselves up to more of a full and rich human experience. And once I can find joy everywhere. Like if you get into the moment, and maybe this isn't for everyone, it'll just take on different tones, I guess, for who's ever doing this. But I can find joy in the hummingbird, like hovering near the flower, or I can find joy in wrestling with my dogs, or I can find joy in looking up and seeing a blue sky. And so I know it'll make a difference for different people, but when you're open and not running from the pain, you actually see more opportunities to experience happiness or joy. It doesn't mean you'll stop the pain, but I would wager that if you're willing to feel pain, you'll have more joy.
And the thing, I think what you're saying is so profound. What, that looking for, like, happiness doesn't come knock on your door, sit in your lap, show up. It's in the doing, right? You are choosing to look at the hummingbird. You're choosing to sit down and look at the sunrise or sunset. You're choosing. So you were earlier describing your flight over here and stuff about that. But there's also a moment of choosing to enjoy the view, or there's all these life doesn't have to be perfect, as you're saying. There's pain, there's discomfort, there are all of these stuff, but you can choose to pay attention to other things and find joy in that.
Right. We were talking earlier about things like sadness and depression, where people really get stuck. And if you look at what's happening, they've quite often lost their ability to be present to the world.
Yes.
They're tuned in. It's almost like they're tuned in and captured by an inner world that just looks like pain, and they're not like connecting. They're not lifting out and seeing, these in the moment things like hummingbirds and stuff like that. And so, if you can sort of lift up and connect, one, you're more likely to be shaped by the immediate contingencies in that moment. And two, like there's even the process of doing that, it has the quality of opening.
Yeah.
Like with your body, this coming up and being present in the world is different than I am my sadness. Yes. Kind of fused and caught, and so that I even like that metaphor of like coming out into the world and seeing that there's a world.
There's somebody, I sometimes see these illustrations. Somebody drew, and I'm sorry I don't remember the artist, but somebody drew a fantastic picture of this person sitting on, in front of a buffet, like a large table full of all these stuff, and there's porridge in front of, and the person just looking down and said, porridge. And the thing is that we're inviting people to expand their. We're looking for expansion of behavioral repertoire. We're looking for expansion of attentional repertoire and expansion of storytelling. We want people to look up and notice the entire buffet. And that doesn't mean that everything in the buffet is nice. Right. We want to look at more stuff. And I think it's just a great metaphor. Like just look up, and look
and see.
And then our brain is, most of us the brain is scanning the environment for potential problems all the time. Yeah. So there's something beautiful in choosing to scan your environment for beauty and for kindness and for connection and for things that we're thankful for. That just, that resonates with me, like looking for the hummingbird and choosing to appreciate it, even though it might be ugly. Your mind might be telling you it's ugly.
Yeah, no. Even ugly is interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's
part of the buffet.
Yes, that's a curious looking thing. What is that? And
what is that?
No, I quite like that idea. I think curiosity is part of this whole process.
Sure.
What is in the world? What is in the skin? Like, we want to do both, right? It's a reflection on both places. But I'm worried that curiosity is going to become like mindfulness and compassion.
Sure. Yes.
Like, it'll take on that
like
technique,
rule govern.
right? So sometimes I even hesitate to say it.
I have to be curious.
You must be.
You must be curious. Yeah. Yes.
And the functions of language, right?
That is a trap. I just want to say that we see there are some people saying hi and they're saying hello. They're just hi, hellos and drinks and things.
Oh, well, I can't read. Why am I trying to read that? It's in a language I don't understand.
Well, just know that we appreciate comments and those and everything. So we're just about to end this beautiful interaction with you guys. What is the this is hard. It could be hard. What is the best advice? Okay. If I say the best, it could be that can be hard. What is one of the best advice you've ever had?
I've ever heard from someone else.
Yeah. Like somebody came an advice that you like. I have one with Kirk Strassel.
Yeah. What is that one?
Well, he said. Oh, this is so embarrassing, but I was talking a lot for him. Yeah. I got a little nervous, and I had Kurt Strassel in the room with me, and he put a hand on my shoulder, and he said, this is hard. He said, Rikke, and then a long pause, where I kind of, I had freaked. And then he said, if you don't know what to say, shut the fuck up. It was at the moment I didn't appreciate it. But it's one of the best advice I've had because I tend to talk when I get nervous. So, shutting up when I don't know what to say. That was just an example. What are one of the advice that you...
Well, I think probably one of the best pieces of advice I ever got came from my mom, not from a psychologist. And she actually sent it to me in an email, and I'm going to forget the author right now, which I apologize for. And I'm not going to get this exactly right, but essentially, maybe somebody online will know who this is. She sent this to me saying, I don't want to go to the grave all pristine and pretty in a nice, put together way. I want to go to the grave beat up, used up, sliding in to the grave full on and saying, wow, what a ride. And I just, love that she sent me that. So that's what I want for myself and for you, and I want that for my clients. I want everyone to say, wow, what a ride when they come to the end.
I can't think of a more beautiful way to end this, Robyn. So our invitation for you guys is to go out, look for the happy, use curiosity in a flexible, functional way, and let's go out with a bang, basically, right? Let's when we come to the end of the life, I hope we can all say, we lived our life fully, we had a blast. Yeah. I am so happy that you're in my life.
Me as well. It's really wonderful to be here.
It's, and I'm so happy that all of you are either watching this right now or watching this later. Please, send us comments, hearts. We appreciate that afterwards. That we go, through the feed from you guys. It's amazing. Thank you for letting us be a part of your life this evening or whenever you're watching this. And you and I go out and have a little bite.
Have a little bite.
Have a little bite to
taste
eat.
what's on the menu.
Taste what's on the menu. We're going to look at the entire menu and have a little taste. So, Robyn, I love you. Thank you for being here.
You too, Ricky. Thank you.
Bye.
And thanks everyone for coming.
Bye.
Bye-bye.